There is definitely some repetition in here, but more importantly, there's also some new slides and new threats in. That's why we do them quarterly. Basically, there's so many new changes in our industry that we need to keep you up to date and keep your staff up to date, and your staff should know what you want them to do. We will be covering some of those new things, and like I said, a lot of it is also reinforcement as well. So with that, let's get into it and start learning. All right. So for those of you who are not familiar with who we are, we're Braver Technology Solutions. We're a managed service provider up here in the Northeast. Thank you very much for joining us. What a handsome staff that is right there. And incredibly amazing looking guy right there as well. So that's me. Braver Technology has been around for over 30 years. And we've been helping our clients navigate through different scenarios, and we've been putting obviously a lot of concentration on security and security training, hence the reason this presentation right here. All right, so what do we want you to get out of this presentation? Well, number one, first and foremost, the new challenges and security problems and solutions that are in place. It's an ever-changing market and ever-changing, and it's a cat and mouse game. Every time we catch the bad guys doing something, they come up with a new way around the security features that we have in place. Securing your network. We want to go through the steps of securing your network now, what you should be doing, what you should have in place. And then also what's next? What's the next step in protection? What's the next step in our industry? Okay, so with that, let's go through and just say why we do quarterly is that basically we need to reinforce this. What we find is that there's a lot in here, and we don't expect you to memorize it every single time. So what we want you to do is it's kind of repetition and reinforcement. It's just like going to the gym. You're exercising those muscles and getting those memory muscles into shape and back up to speed. Okay. All right. So why is there such a threat? Well, basically, there's money to be made. There's tons of money to be made. There's these are actually active jobs that are employed by industries, and sadly also by governments. Foreign governments that want to attack. This is actually a lucrative position. It's actually something that there is actually schools for, not necessarily in the U.S. but overseas, and there's actual training involved in place. So we're actually, it's no different than any other thief. There's a criminal element to it, and it's very, very active, and it gets more active as there's more money out there. As you can see, there's lots of different ways that they can attack you, lots of different ways that they can attack you. So first thing I want to talk about, and unfortunately, I've never have a lack of slides going in. What's happened since the last quarter? Well, there's actually a major infection that sadly, I don't think got as much press as it should. So what happened? So there was a company called SolarWinds. SolarWinds is a major provider of software to the various industries going through. SolarWinds themselves were hacked into, and they were attacked. SolarWinds, the product especially that they that they attacked, are in some of the biggest establishments out there. And it's speculated that the hackers have been in there since last June before they were detected and got in. So SolarWinds, that compromise itself actually breached a lot of major locations. When I say major locations, I mean, we're talking the Pentagon, the US Treasury. These are all locations that were using that software package to monitor and maintain their own network. And that's the software that was infiltrated. This is a company called FireEye. Many of you have not heard of FireEye. FireEye is one of the major security companies out there. Their whole job is to help you detect and protect against intruders and hackers coming in. Why do I have the slide up here? FireEye themselves were a victim of this attack. As a matter of fact, the reason that the attack was detected was because somebody at FireEye finally said, hey, wait a minute, we just ran this tool on our own network and something doesn't look right. But they had already been breached. So the reason that I bring this up is basically there's a threat out there, there's a landscape out there. It's very difficult, or it's impossible to say that there's a zero chance of a detection coming in. What we really want to do, and what we always say, is we need to make it so that getting into your network is more difficult than the data you have is worth getting at. So as you can see, the institutes that we're showing you, it was worth their data. They had a lot of high revenue data that they wanted to be that the hackers were willing to breach because of the sensitivity and the valuable data. And this, of course, is unfortunately one of the much more mainstream ones, is that they detected the hackers had actually gotten all the way into the nuclear weapons part of the security site of the U.S. government. So that's a concern. But what it also tells you is that if you do get breached and you do have a ransomware, and it's possible that some of you on this call or on this webinar are on here because you did get one and you want to know what you can do to protect yourself, don't feel like you really failed yourself. Just learn from it and move forward, because these are the biggest institutes in the country that all got breached. The other one I want to bring up, which is of course timely right now, I'm going to bring this up for both the CPAs that are on the call, but also the clients of the CPA firms that are on the call. If you're using an online accounting tool, QuickBooks Online, I'm going to pick on that one because it's the most popular one. It's very common for you to give your CPA firm access into your QuickBooks Online. And if you're a CPA firm, it's very common for you to have access into your QuickBooks Online of your customers. Here's the thing that I want you to be aware of. There have been a couple breaches in the industry where the CPA firm was breached, and they went through that breach to get into the client's QuickBooks Online account. So if you are a CPA firm, or if your CPA firm has access into your QuickBooks Online or some other accounting package, make sure that the CPA firm has two-factor authentication, that they have extra security in place. They're a gateway to get into your books. And also think along those lines of other of the other packages that you have in place. But basically, we want to do this especially for tax season, because it's going to be this is going to be a little more exposed now than normal. Take a look at those accounting packages that you have access to. Make sure that there's security in place for them. All right, I'll touch on Bitcoin really quick. Obviously, if you invest in Bitcoin, you're probably really happy with Bitcoin. Unfortunately, as an IT provider, we're not that happy with Bitcoin. The big thing that we're not happy about with Bitcoin is because it can't be traced. Why do I care about that? Is that's how these terrorists get paid, is through Bitcoin. Once the money is there, it's gone. There's literally no way to trace it. That's the whole point of Bitcoin existing. There's no real footprint to go through. There's no regulations to go through. If there was a way to regulate this currency so that it could be traced, the amount of criminal activity would drop severely down there. Now, maybe that's not a realistic goal. Maybe there's just a marketplace for this type of currency, and that's what we have to do. But this is what you have. This is what we've seen, at least on our side. Could be a coincidence, could be cause and effect, but basically we've seen a sharp increase with cyber attacks as the Bitcoin value raises, so the attacks raise. The other thing that we're noticing too is that we're getting reports that the ransoms that are being requested. Number one, it used to be that we could, our industry could negotiate with that ransom and bring it down. There's less negotiating going down. Unfortunately, they know how much those Bitcoins are worth and how much your data is worth to you. So unfortunately, we're seeing that going through. The other thing I'll mention too, there's unfortunately a new another thing to bring up that's a change in our industry and why we want to bring this up quarterly. The new way that we're seeing some of the breaches come in is that the bad guys are now actually going in, and instead of encrypting the data right away, they're actually starting to pull the data out. And the reason that we're worried about that is the fear is that what the next step they're going to do is actually use your data as the actual ransom itself. They're going to actually hold your data hostage offsite. So even if you have a backup and a restore, which was the way that we would typically take care of that, what they're now saying is, hey, we have a copy of your data offsite. We're going to hold it for ransom until you pay us. We're starting to see the beginning of that. And of course, that's something we're worried about. All right, so we do have one question up here. Are applications hosted on the cloud at less or more risk being hosted? Wow, that is such a really appropriate question. And I cannot, there's a couple schools of thought in that. And so one of the schools of thought is that these are bigger institutes, so they put in more security and more infrastructure in place. So that's one school of thought. But the other school of thought is that now the attackers have one central place that they can go after that they know there's more data at. So instead of going to your local business, where they're only they have to work through so much to get to your data is only worth so much to them. If they can break into a bigger facility where your data is then in line with other facilities, well, then that makes that target a little more attractive. I can't give you a definitive yes or no on that, because it's kind of like a debate in our industry on which way is more secure and are you more of a target going through. But it's a great question. It's a very topical question. In our industry, it's one of those debatable questions that there's a lot of conversations going back and forth on. Great question. Thank you very much. So the this is your network layout. We're going to go through some of the basic functionality of your network and why it's in place. The first one we'll go through is our first and foremost trustee firewall. This is our first line of protection. Most important thing on the firewall, need to keep it up to date, need to keep it current. Firewalls are under constant attack. They are constantly being hit by the outside entities. You can actually see in this log right here how often they're hit. You don't see it happen. It all happens in the background going through. We are updating our clients' firewalls at least once a month on all of the new definitions. There was a big update that we pushed out 2 months ago that was an interim. I think it was late November that came out, that we actually did a special round of updates to all of our clients' firewalls because there was a special patch that came out. So those times that we'll actually do a special patch and actually do the 2 times, more than once on the updated. But it's important for that firewall to be up to date, managed, under warranty, and also current, because it is the very, very first line of defense. The other thing that we like to do is close down as many ports as possible. So when you have your user remoting in, of course, all of our clients know this, that we're really, really adamant that you should only be remoting into your network through some kind of secure SSL, VPN. You should never have an open RDP port. Unfortunately, there's too many times that we're seeing an open RDP port to the network coming into the office. When your user working remote, there's a great opportunity for them to work remote, and obviously everybody is working remote right now. So getting into the working remote, so basically you have the ability to work remote via phone systems. Obviously, most of our clients know that we offer a hosted voice solution, which is great. What we're still seeing now is a lot of companies still forwarding calls to cell phones and outside the organization going through, which for some of our clients, that's still a bit of a security concern or a bit of an uncomfortable feeling when you're calling a client from your cell phone. Now that client has your cell phone, and you may want all of your calls to be routed through the office line, especially in certain industries that you really don't want to have the exposure of a conversation going on an unencrypted line. So look into a hosted VoIP solution to accommodate that. It looks like we might be working remote a lot longer than everybody thought. Typically, it's a cost savings too. So it's worth looking into just to save money on the cost. Of course, we'd be happy to talk to you about what our solution does, but there's there's a lot of great solutions out there. The other thing that you want to have in place is a remote access policy for your clients that are working remote right now to make sure that they're adhering to the company's guidelines. We can send you a template if you'd like. You just have to reach out to Jen, who's on the call today. She'd be more than happy to forward a template over to you that you can utilize and modify to your own usage. But again, it looks like we're going to be having employees work remotely for a little while longer than I think everybody thought. So let's make sure that they're going by the company standards and the company guidelines. I'm going to go into some of the best practices for working remote a little bit later on in this presentation. All right, next thing that's extremely important is computer virus. Computer antivirus is getting very more robust as we go along. It's getting so much more in depth to it as things are going. So it's important to have a good AV system that is constantly updated on a regular basis, monitored and maintained for your network. All right, so let's go over to email and spam filtering. So those of you on Office 365, you should, if you don't already, you should have something called Advanced Threat Protection, which is just, I think, only like a $2 fee for Office 365. Pretty small add-in for what it does. A very advanced spam filtering. For those of our clients that have in-house Exchange service, we actually did a migration for you to do spam and virus filtering through Office 365 So we just upgraded all of our clients internally to actually now do an enhanced virus, spam and virus filtering. Most, I don't think any of them really knew, other than the email that we told them saying, hey, listen, we're going to enhance your spam and virus filtering, because we're trying to keep up to date with all of the latest trends and all of the latest threat protection that's out there. Again, right now, phishing is our #1 concern for way that bad guys are getting in. The way they're getting in through phishing, you're going to see some samples later on in this presentation, is that those emails are very mundane and very basic. So they're so easy to get through the spam and virus filtering. And actually, so here you can see like a typical stats of the ratio of bad emails to good emails. As you can see, out of the 60 million emails that were received through our mail system, only 17 million were actually valid and allowed. So that's the value of a good spam and virus filtering system. So the next thing that we're going to put in place, so that we do have in place for our clients, is DNS filtering. So what DNS filtering does, it takes known bad websites and blocks your users from getting to those bad websites. It takes known bad links that are on websites and blocks them from getting to those known bad links. They're going to get a message up on their screen that looks something like this, saying basically, hey, you can't go to this site because it's flagged as being a bad site that's going through. Some of our clients, you might have seen this when you mistyped a website. If you mistyped Facebook or something like that, it's a common way you end up on these, because what will happen is the bad guys will buy those website names that are close to Facebook, close to Amazon, knowing that somebody's going to accidentally type those in, and they make their websites look like the genuine one. They make it look like Facebook. They make it look like Amazon. So what we do is we block them from even getting to that website right off the bat. This is a typical log of what the block looks like. All right, so let's talk about wireless on us. So wireless is becoming more and more prevalent as businesses, obviously, the majority of you have them. What we want to stress really strongly on the wireless is that there's two types of wireless. We have our internal wireless and our guest wireless. It's really important that the only access to the internal wireless should be devices that require connection to your internal wireless. That would be like a notebook. You know, if you have a notebook and you need to get on the network, yeah, the internal wireless makes sense. That might be some machine that's out in the machine shop, or a warehouse scanner that's scanning into your software program. Those are all valid reasons of why you should have somebody on your internal wireless. Everybody else, every other thing, your phones, iPads, you name it, should be on the guest wireless. You should not be handing out the internal company wireless password to people who are just casually coming in. If you have that situation where you have users, the cat's out of the bag, they're already on the company Wi-Fi, what I strongly recommend is that you change the password for the corporate Wi-Fi to something else that will actually force their devices to be disconnected. And then you say, hey, listen, do you really need the company Wi-Fi, or can we make do with the guest Wi-Fi? All right, let's talk about your server. Your server needs to be patched, maintained, and up to date. Right now, server 2012 and older is out of support for Microsoft. It's on extended support. And some of those operating systems like 2008 is almost zero support. What extended support means for 2012 is that if you have a problem on your server, number one, you're gonna have to pay a $500 fee to Microsoft just to call them. Number two, they have zero guarantee that they're going to fix that problem for that $500. So that's why you want to stay current. They're also going to stop releasing security updates and security patches. And there are some known issues that they probably just don't, that they actually just don't plan on solving or securing. So the key thing is to make sure that your operating system is up to date, because again, this is a frontline point of support for you. So what a security looks like. Okay, so let's talk about backups. So obviously backups, we want that to be our one of our last resorts, but obviously it's an important part of what we do and what you have on your network. Number one, you want to make sure you have an image-based backup, that the backup itself is a complete image of the server, not just individual files or folders or anything like that. You should be able to spin up that entire server off of that backup at any moment, at any time that you need that backup to happen. That backup should happen throughout the day. Gone are the days where you just go through at night. You want to happen throughout the day, as you're going through, as your changes are being made on the network. that sometimes is only possible with newer technology and newer servers. So if you have an older server, it's possible that you may not have the bandwidth or capability to do it throughout the day. But obviously, it's a lot easier. If you have an issue at 4 o'clock, it's a lot easier going back to a restore from 1 o'clock than it is from the night before. Next thing to talk about is backups of your offsite. So some of you are starting to utilize the cloud technology, which is great. It's really handy. We do it ourselves. We utilize Teams for some of our file storage. We use Office 365. It's important to know that those facilities are not necessarily always backed up 100% by Microsoft to the extent that you want them to be. But then also, if you get a ransomware, there are new ransomwares that will basically infect the Microsoft system itself. So what will happen is the hackers know where the data is, so that's where they're going to go. So if you move your data, they're not going to say, guess what, you got me. They're going to say, okay, well, how do I get at this new location? Well, they go and they attack the new location. And so you still need some kind of form of secondary backup off of your cloud provider that is redundant to what the cloud provider has. So that basically you have a second set. You don't want to trust the one person that has all your data to do everything. You want to have a redundant backup whenever and as much as possible. Let's get into offsite backups. So offsite backups are incredibly important in this day and age. There are so many cases on the web of people who their data was encrypted, their data was ransomware, the data was compromised in some way, and so was the backups because they were local. The only way to recover from that scenario is either 1, to pay the ransom, or 2, to go to your offsite backups. You want to make sure you have a good offsite backup. What we do for our clients not only do they have an offsite backup, we actually quarterly, we will spin up that server. So what we do in our offsite backups, it's an entire image of the server that's offsite. Then we take that entire image and we spin it up once a quarter to make sure that that image is still working and spinning up. And I'll tell you, it's very impressive and it's very reassuring that if you know that you need to go to the backup, that at least you went and said, oh, thank gosh, we spun that up not too long ago. We know it was working at least that point in time. You're not testing it the same day that you need it. And these are bad guys. They're always in red. All right, so the other thing that we would recommend that you have and what we do on a regular basis is security scorecards. So what we're doing on our clients on a regular basis, we're giving them updated security scorecards. What that means is that we have the 10,000-foot view of critical items that every network should have done. And we're giving a scorecard to you, our clients, and saying, okay, this is where you rate in this system. This is what you should have done in the system. The reason we're doing this is to work with you to create a roadmap. Now, the good news is a lot of the stuff in here is actually free. So you just have to enable it. So that's the nice part. But what we're really doing is creating a roadmap to come in and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what needs to be done. This is how it's going to be done, and basically schedule it out. So it's a nice clean transition to what you need. But the most important thing is just knowing that you need it. All right. Let's go into the data breach part of it. I'm going to click through this one quickly, unfortunately, because there's a lot of them. So the big thing that we want to get into here is what I touched on in the morning, is that at the beginning of the seminar, is that major companies are just as vulnerable at hacking as smaller companies, unfortunately. There's just so many of them that come out on a regular basis, and we're constantly getting new ones. It's never difficult to find a new attack that happened somewhere. This one just happened recently where there's a big Scottish government environmental protection agency that was hacked into, and somebody stole data from the organization going through. Again, these are major government agencies that have a lot bigger budgets than a lot of our clients do for protecting their data. You can see that there's enough data breaches that there's actually a website that actually collects and monitors the data breaches and who are the worst offenders. So what do they do with that data? Well, there's a lot of negotiating that goes on in that data. So basically, there's 3 different types of web. We have the type that everybody sees, the Facebook, YouTubes, Instagrams, all of that stuff, normal stuff. Then we have the next layer down, which is sort of like the secure web, which would be your credit card companies, your bank institutes, that stuff that's all encrypted and secured. But then you have the bottom layer, which is the bottom layer for a reason. This is where all the bad guys hang out. This is where they sell your data to. So what they're doing when they go and get your data and they go and get into it, they're not necessarily doing anything with itself. They're almost like a conduit. They're like step one in the process. They get your data, they take it, they say, hey, listen, guess what? I was just able to breach into this Office 365 account. I was able to get into their emails. And when I got into their emails, I found out that this is the payroll company they use. This is the bank company they use. This is the insurance company they use. How much is this worth to you? And then somebody buys that data from them. That person that buys that data now is good at manipulating that data and leveraging it to their best benefit to go through. So obviously this is the part that still goes through. There's other things that happen on the dark web. I'm only talking about the technology side of it. Obviously unfortunately, there's money laundering, there's gun trading, there's drug trading, human trafficking, you name it, all happen on the web. Unfortunately, there's good and bad and everything, and that's what happens on the web. This is the number of infections that have happened on the web. That slide's a little tough to see. So let's go into the user education, which is probably the most important part. So what we're going to go through here is we're going to go through various samples of what we want you to have your users look out for. This is the part that's going to the gym and that muscle memory. We're going to go through it over and over again. We really want them to go through and get used to what they're seeing. So first, we're going to go through when they get into a site to download them. You want to make sure that you don't click on any of those buttons that you see on the screen. You basically, almost none of these are good. If you get to a site that has this kind of application on it, you shouldn't be here and you shouldn't be downloading anything unless you really, really know what you're doing. And certainly your users should not be doing this on the company computers. If you see this screen, do not call the phone number. We have had clients, unfortunately, that did call the phone number and then successfully had somebody on the other end walk through getting onto their computer. Please don't do that. The only thing you want to hit in here is this red X at the very top. Just close the whole window out, reboot your computer, call us, let us know that you have it, so we can start doing a security sweep and a security scan. Same thing with this window here. We want you to reboot your computer, unplug it from the Ethernet cable, whatever you need to do to disconnect it from the network, then give us a call. Then we'll come in and scan it and make sure it's clean. I should reinforce that too. If there's a computer on your network that is acting suspicious or something odd is happening, first thing you can do if you don't want to call us, either unplug that Ethernet cable or power it down. Could not stress that enough. If somebody is in with even just the slightest malicious software, they're using that as a gateway to get in and supply worse software on your network. This is how they're getting in a lot of times. It's just through these mundane applications right here. They're like, oh yeah, no, my virus protection should get that. That's only the one step that is going through. It's actually going to that next level. Let's talk about phishing. So phishing, what we're looking for is we're looking for odd and unique emails to come through. So we're looking for things that don't quite match up or don't look normal, or emails that you don't see. Here's some examples on the screen of what you're looking for. You want to make sure that there's actually, I think the number one thing that I always look for is the domain name that is coming from. It's first and foremost always the same, the one thing that I look for, because it's very difficult for the system to hide that. It's not impossible. It is possible for me to send an email as you, but it's a little trickier. So that's the first thing I do, because that's usually the telling sign on most of them right there, is where the from address. But that doesn't mean that they can't get around that. There's definitely ways they can get around that. Keep an eye out for hovering over the links and looking at different things. Keep an eye out. Oh, I'll go into the this as well. Sometimes the most successful phishing emails are the most basic ones. I won't even say sometimes. I'm going to say 90% of the time. The most successful ones are just the basic ones, the ones without graphics, the ones that don't look like anything. They just look like a normal email message. This is a typical one that's come in. It's actually come into my inbox, as you can see. These are the ones, unfortunately, that the users are clicking on. This is a great one. We've had people click on this one before who don't even have voicemail via email. I don't know why they were clicking on it. They don't even have that capability in their phone system to do that, yet they were still clicking on it. What do they do once they get that information? Well, they're going to try and social engineer you. So what they're going to try and do is call up the people that are related to that. So it's not uncommon, unfortunately, for people to go through a conversation and call up on the phone and say, okay, listen, yeah, this is XYZ. You guys are in the middle of a project for us. You have an invoice that's due. Can you pay that invoice to us? I'm going to give you the wire instructions on how to pay it. and they basically can trick you into how to do it. I'm going to give you a real life example on how that actually happened. So everybody knows Shark Tank. This is exactly the scenario that happened with Shark Tank. Somebody socially engineered her staff to actually wire funds. What did they do? They called up and they said, hey, yeah, they called up a vendor and said, hey, yeah, we know you're working with Barbara Kokorian. And they said, yeah. It's like, okay, do we just got to get ready for payment? Can you give us the details? Okay, great. They gave you the details of what the payment should be. Then they called up Barbara's office, said, hey, yeah, you're in the process of working on this. I know you're about to release this payment for this amount. Here, we want to give you the wire instructions on how to send it to us. And her office sent it. And then guess what happened once the wire money went? Somebody transferred it to Bitcoins. Once the Bitcoins are there, it's gone. Done. And so it's really easy. So especially with wire transfers, I'll talk to this as well. Work with your bank to set up secure parameters for wire transfers. I'd love to see you as much as possible require 2 signatures. Maybe have a 24-hour delay before a wire transfer can be sent. Have some kind of verbal authentication. You want to have a lot of different security. Different banks, unfortunately, have different capabilities and different limitations in their wire transfer. We've been seeing this lately, that some banks do not have the same level of wire transfer that we would love to see. So work with your bank, make sure that they have a good policy in place that can protect you. Because again, once that money is wired out, it's a very slim chance you're going to see it again. They're going to transfer that to a Bitcoin really quick. We've had a couple cases where the FBI has been able to recover money back, which is really cool, but they're less likely than not, unfortunately. The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to social engineering is your website. This is always a tough call between marketing and security. On the security side, I would wipe clean everything on your website that had any kind of trace of your clients or your vendors or your team, because that's the data that I would use as a hacker against you. I would call one of your clients and say, hey, listen, we're working on a project for you. I'm just checking to see how it's going. They're going to say, oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, we have this and this and this. Like, oh yeah, okay. Do you know when do you guys expect us to finish it? We want to make sure we're on time. Oh, probably this, that. I'm like, okay, great. And what do you show as the open balance for that? Oh, we show this and this and this. Oh, great. Thank you very much. Hope everything goes well. Then I'm going to call back to the vendor and say, hey, yeah, we have this project open. It's going to be done on this date. It's going to be through. Here's the money. Can you send us the money via this route, via this wire? I got all that from your website without even trying, unfortunately. But websites are a marketing tool. I get it. It's a constant struggle going back and forth on what you want to do and what you want to present. I'm going to go through this one because it's really basic. Unfortunately, it's happened. It still keeps happening, and we still keep hearing about it. These are generic emails that are coming through on the correspondence where one of our clients was nice enough to send us an actual one. They did not get duped by this, but they actually were did it. So this is a really common one where they're getting a random email, and they started off with them asking for $1,000 worth of iTunes gift cards. And the poor clients were just trying to do their best, and they'd go after an office admin, and the person would say, hey, yeah, I'm working on this case. I need your help, or I'm working on this project. I really think this new client would win them over if I gave him $1,000 worth of iTunes gift cards. Can you go out and get some for me? And basically, and then what they do is how they get the iTunes gift cards, they convince the admin to actually scratch off the number on the back and give them the iTunes gift card, in case you're wondering how they actually make out how it actually ends up in the end, because that's how it ends up in the end. On the bad side. So this is one of the ways that they're snooping. You got to educate your staff to look for those unusual oddities that'll come through. And a lot of times what'll happen too is they'll send this when the person in the company is on vacation. And they can easily find out who's on vacation. They just call the person and call for the person at the office, and they say, no, he or she's on vacation. So then they'll send a fake email from that person asking for whatever it may be, iTunes gift cards. We've seen other ones where they'll come in and go through and say, okay, listen, this is the iTunes gift cards one here. I'll click through that one, going through. So another one is basically, they'll say, hey, they'll wait and see if somebody's on vacation. Then they'll send the fake email off and say, hey, guess what? I'm changing banks for my payroll. Can you update the information for my bank account? And so the next payroll comes around, all of a sudden the funds start getting deposited for the payroll into the wrong bank account. We've seen cases where this has actually been a few paychecks before the person even noticed. And again, the money's gone once it goes there, unfortunately. So in this case, and again, this is actually a legit message track that one of our clients was kind enough to send us. And we went through this with the hacker just so we could actually capture this for you. So they actually went as far, they were actually going to send a voided check. They actually did send a voided check to actually send the payroll into, which amazed me. So, and this is an example of one of our clients getting one for a fake invoice. So say, hey, yeah, you have an open invoice with us. Here's the information. And it came from an actual vendor of theirs, but the accounts payable person was close enough to catch it, but we've had other clients that actually didn't. All right, so how do we help prevent all of this? We can't prevent it. User education is the best option, and phishing testing. So those of you know that we're implementing phishing testing across our clients, going through. It's a very it's a lengthy process to get you set up and running. We hope to have all of them done within the next 6 months. But basically, we're going to send regular phishing tests to your users, and they're gonna click on it. You're gonna get a report that actually says, okay, this is who clicked on it. The other thing that we're working on is the training that goes on the back end. Like, okay, you clicked on it, go through this quiz and say, okay, this is what you clicked on. This is why you clicked on it. This is what you need to look at next time. This is what you need to look for. Because the phishing, as I said before, is the #1 thing that we're worried about coming through. What do they do to get into the phishing? Well, one of the main things that they're getting to phishing is into your email. So this is why we have such a heavy push to Office 365 for our clients right now, is that with Office 365, it allows for two-factor authentication for free, which we cannot easily or at all do on the Exchange servers in-house. So what will happen is, this is the main thing that people want to get into, because once they get into your emails, they've gotten into your whole business. They know who your vendors are, they know who your payroll is, they know who your bank is, they can do reset passwords, they can do all sorts of stuff. And what do? They sit there and they watch and they collect the data, and they wait and they wait and they wait, and then they use that data when it's appropriate. Again, typically when somebody's on vacation. So two-factor authentication, probably the biggest thing that I can suggest that you do across the board for all of your applications. Everything. Is it foolproof? Definitely not. There are ways to get through two-factor authentication. I'd totally be lying to you if I said that it was foolproof. But it makes it really, really difficult. And that attacker has to go through a lot more steps in order to get through that two-factor authentication. Okay. What are some really basic blocking and tackling that you can do? So those of you that are clients of ours and get our CIO reviews, you know that we send you a list of old users at least once a year. You need to clean up those old users. Those old users are vulnerable to your system because they're still have active accounts. You need to disable those. If you want a list of them, contact your account rep at our site. We'll run a report for you and give you a list of old users that you should disable. We're happy to do it more often. Just let us know. We'll run that report and get back to you. Change your passwords. Everybody should have some kind of password change policy, both on your Office 365 and on your internal network. You should be changing them at minimum twice a year going through. Enable two-factor authentication. We talked about that. Really important. Set password complexity. Really important. Password length is better than complexity. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a random password of 8XYYJ, right, and it's 7 characters long, it's a good password. 8 characters long. It's a good password. But actually, from a hacker standpoint, a more difficult password to crack is a password that says, I love it when it's sunny on a Monday. And even though it's a very basic one, because of the length of it, it's actually more difficult for them to hack into than a short one. Now, obviously, as you can guess, the best one is if you do, I love it when it's sunny on a Monday, but then you take the I and you make it a 1, and you take the S and you make it a $sign. Now you've got the best of all worlds. You're adding in complexity and length at the same time. So that's your best option for password security. I would definitely do that on your critical accounts like bank accounts and stuff like that. Love to see it across the board on all of your accounts. Cybersecurity insurance. You really should have cybersecurity insurance. And this is not a pitch for the cybersecurity insurance companies. This is saying that you saw the companies at the beginning of the slide that have been breached. You're not alone. Everybody's vulnerable. really important that you get security to protect yourself. Why is that? The security company is actually going to actually not only help pay for damages, they're actually going to help investigate and actually put resources in to actually help track down what vulnerabilities, what the cleanup process is. That's really helpful for you and for us on that side. Right now, it's affordable. So I would definitely suggest getting it. Your insurance company is going to give you some kind of rider on top of your policy. Definitely get it. Security tips. So if you're not getting our weekly security tips, please let Jen know and she'll sign you up for them. We send out a security tip every single week on new things that are going through. I'm going to go through really quick on bring your own devices. So basically what we saw during the initial part of the pandemic is that everybody wanted to work remote. However, not everybody had a computer to work remote. So what is that? And then there was very few computers available because everybody was buying them. So what did happen? People started using their own computers. At this point in time, you should really, if you plan on your users working remote for a long period of time, you should really invest in company-owned computers so that you can now control the data that's on there. If you haven't started that process, you really should. You're a little bit behind the 8 ball now. Devices are starting to be a little more readily available, so you really should make that investment. If you think this is going to be a long-term scenario, your home computers, you don't know what they have for antivirus on them. You don't know what they have for malware protection. You don't know if they have any security updates. You don't know who else in the house is using them on them. Once they tie into your network with an SSL VPN, you literally just took that computer and plugged it into your network. Literally what you did. You took the home computer and you plugged it into your company network. Whatever's on that home computer, you just brought to work. So during the pandemic, there's little options. You need to get people working. We get it. We're a little bit past that point now. You really should have company-owned computers that people are using for work. Make sure screensavers are on. Lock the computer when they're not alone. People are working from home. There's other people, there's kids, spouses, everything walking by. You want to make sure they're not seeing any of your company sensitive data just because that user is working from home. You want to make sure that that when they're talking on the phone, that there's a little chance of eavesdropping. The network computers at home, you want to make sure that the computers at home, if they're not on your network and they're not owned by you, make sure that they change the password, that they keep the password current, that they're using some kind of way to store the passwords, and that they're not storing them in a browser. Again, it's just a huge concern for us right now with the bring your own device on the notebooks. Don't let your staff store important files on the local computers. You still want to have them in some central location, even if it is company-owned network. You want them in some kind of central location. If you need help finding a file sharing program that'll accommodate you, reach out to our account managers. We'll help you locate the right one that'll work for you and accommodate you. What you don't want is your users taking a file, loading it on their local computer, working on it, because that file is not backed up. It's not secure in any way, and we don't have any way of recovering it if something were to happen to that computer. But also, you don't have access to that file. If that employee's computer dies, or if that employee just leaves the company, you don't have access to that file anymore because it's no longer on your network. It's no longer within your control. All right. File sharing software, I just alluded to that a little bit. If you have this need going through, things are changing. There's different ways of doing file sharing. Reach out to us. We'll help you if you need it and you need solutions if it's not working for you. Wi-Fi at home computers, at home networks. So again, people working at home, we're now relying on their Wi-Fi. We're relying on their Wi-Fi technology and what else is on there. If their Wi-Fi password is still the default one that came with the Wi-Fi access point, guess what? Their neighbors probably has access into their Wi-Fi, which means they have access into that computer, which means they have access into your network. So we're very concerned about the Wi-Fi access at people's houses right now, going through. And again, it's something that we had all along, and it's just more pronounced now that more people are working from home. All right, we do have a free report if you're interested. It's called the Top 10 Guide to Hackers. Again, you can go to this website and get it and just fill out a form. It'll go right to you. The other thing I want to talk about on hosted VoIP is I bring this up as much as I possibly can. When you have your phones at home, which is awesome. You can take your phone right from your desk, bring it home, function on it, no problem. It works great. You need to make sure that you're updating your 911 location on that phone, and also making sure that your family knows that, hey, this 911 location on this phone is this date. It's really important. It's more of a personal security issue, but it's also a bit of a liability issue for the company as well if it's a company phone. So if you want to know what 911 location is tied into your phone, you just have to pick it up and dial 933. It'll tell you what the 911 address that's associated with your phone. Make sure the family members know the access to that phone, what that phone is for, and what it's doing, and what it's about, and if you should or shouldn't use it for 911, especially young kids. All right, up on our website, we have regular blogs that talk about different levels of security and different updates. Love to see you take a look at that, glance at it. We also have a free incident report guide that we can give you as well, that you can take a look at and work on. So this is a proactive measure. It'll also help you, for those of you who have security guidelines, security questionnaires that you get from your upstream vendor, whether you be a hospital, Security Exchange Commission, whatever it may be. A lot of you have security questionnaires. We know you contact us for it. This will help you if you have this in place to check off that box to say, yeah, of course we have an incident response plan. Here it is. Okay, let's recap. We're in the home stretch here. All right, we talked about the new security changes, new problems that have come on, and the solutions. Talked about securing your network. And we talked about what you should do going forward. It is really important to know that having a secure workforce, both in the office and remote, is the most important thing you can do for your network. You know, unfortunately, too well, once there's a breach or once there's a compromise, you know too well the dangers of having an unsecure, uneducated staff. Really important, have them attend these webinars, these cybersecurity webinars. Not only do you have a checkbox that you can put in on your questionnaire saying, hey, has your staff attended cybersecurity webinars? Yeah, they do it once a quarter. More the realistic possibility that more than likely one of these things that I just brought up, and more than likely one of these examples that we just showed, they're going to come across. You want them to have that aha moment to say, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't click on that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. That one little split section of doubt is what's going to save your network. It's what's going to save your users from clicking on the wrong thing. All right, that is all I have. Thank you so much for adding the presentation. I can see that there's that there are some questions. Number one question we always get, Jen, are we going to record and share this webinar?
Yes, we are. It's been recorded and it should be up on this current version should be up on our website.
Right. Yes, we are going to record and share this webinar out there. With a couple questions regarding hosted applications going through. So the on the hosted applications, yes, I think I covered that. It's a mixed bag. I can't give you a definitive yes or no. I'd be totally lying and give you a biased opinion on that. The Jen, if you're ready, if you haven't already, can you put the poll up on there? And I'm going to give you guys an answer to the poll from earlier on the webinar as well. So so if you guys could take just a couple seconds, rate this webinar for us, it'd be really, really helpful in letting us know as if this is the right content for you. For those of you, if you could, in the Q&A section, let us know, was this helpful? Is this what you're looking for? Do you want more webinars along this line? And is it going to be beneficial for your staff going through? And how about the length? How about the time? How about the date? How about the time of day? All of that stuff. All right. So our password generator site's safe. I'm going to give you a caveat on that and say the majority of them are going to be safe. If you are going to a site to generate a password, as long as you're not putting in that site what you're generating the password for, then yes, I would say it is actually very handy to have a password generated site. Those are great for random generating passwords. Also, if you happen to use on the home front, a lot of people will use like password managers as well. Some of the password managers will have password generators as well. But yeah, there's certain sites that I'll jump on when I want to randomly generate a password, and I'll go in and randomly generate that. Keep in mind also what I said too, though, length of a password is just as important as the complexity of the password as well. The way that works is basically if somebody's going through a brute force attack, what they're doing is they're trying iterations of different passwords going through. The other thing that is really important, have different passwords. Make sure you're not using the same password over and over and over again. If you use the same password for Facebook that you use for your office, or even if it's a variant of that, guess what I'm going to do? Once I get your Facebook password, I'm going to then go and I'm going to see where you work. I'm going to say, oh, all right, they work at XYZ company. Well, all right, I know XYZ company has a mail system somewhere. Let me go try and log into their mail system, because every mail system, whether it be all Office 365, whatever, it's going to have some web component to it. So I'm going to log into that. I'm going to log into that web. Well, I'm going to first guess your username for the web. I'm going to guess it's your first initial last name. Maybe it's not. All right, maybe it's your first name, last name. Maybe it's your first name dot last name. Maybe it's your first name, last initial. It's going to be some variant of that. So I'm going to get your username pretty easily on that. Now I have your Facebook password. Well, there's a strong possibility that your company password is some variant of your Facebook password. Your kid's name and birthday, your cat's name and birthday, your anniversary date, whatever it may be. I'm going to use that as a seed image to start guessing the remainder of your password on it. And I'm going to use that to get in. And I might use that also to get into your bank accounts. I might use that to get into your Home Depot account. I might use that to get into your Walmart account. And I'm just going to start charging stuff. I'm going to start buying stuff. I'm just going to grind. And what am I going to buy? I'm going to buy gift cards. Then I'm going to use those gift cards and use them somewhere else because they're not traceable. So it's really important to have different passwords, complex passwords, and long passwords. Going through. All right, so to answer the poll from earlier that we had on who was the best Batman, I will agree with the consensus of the group that Christian Bale was the best Batman. So congratulations, everybody. Unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed that Jen did not have Will Arnett as one of the options up there, who is Lego Batman, which is also an awesome Batman. But thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for filling out the poll for the survey. Thank you. I'm going to stay on for a little while longer in case there's any more Q&A. This recording will be available and we'll post it out. And we're also going to email a link. Please have all of your staff watch it. With that, I think that is it. Thank you so much for attending.